Hello friends, you're watching NFL Daily here on Chat Sports, presented by BetDSI, the internet's #1 sportsbook. I am your host, Tom Downey, here to talk about Joe Flacco and what the future holds for the, at least for now, current Ravens quarterback. So the report from Ian Rappaport is that Joe Flacco, now his time is pretty much over in Baltimore. The Ravens will move on from Flacco with the goal of either cutting him or trading him. Now here's the thing. Regardless of if it's a trade or a cut, the Ravens save the same amount of money. If it's a trade, it's $18.5 million. If it's a cut, or if it's after June 1st, it's $8.5 million, excuse me. If it's before June 1st, it's $10.5 million. Now, he has no more guaranteed money left on his contract. The way it's set up is that the next team would take on the future base salary. So it's $18.5 in 2019, which isn't that bad, but then it balloons to $20.25 in 2020 and $24.25 in 2021. And what that means is, I don't know if you're going to see a team actually offer up good value for Joe Flacco because A, he has not been that great as of late, and B, that is still a pretty hefty sum to take on for what could only be a stopgap quarterback. So my question to you here is, would you want Joe Flacco as your starting quarterback? Give me a like for yes, give me a laughy face for no. Now, if you're on YouTube, feel free to just say so in the comments section. I kind of lean more towards no, with some exceptions, and we'll go through 7 teams that could acquire Joe Flacco, and several of them would be better off with Joe Flacco as their starting quarterback. Now, we'll start things off at number 7 with the Oakland Raiders, working our way from least likely towards most likely. Now, the Raiders, money's not an issue there. Projected as of right now for $79 million before restructures and cuts and all that, so plenty of money there for the Oakland Raiders. The issue is, they still have Derek Carr. And I think at best, even if you're the biggest Derek Carr hater, it is a lateral move for the Oakland Raiders to, I would assume, then dump Derek Carr, save quite a bit of money. You'd save 15 if it's before June 1st, 20 if it's after June 1st, to cut Derek Carr to make room for Joe Flacco. I don't think it makes much sense, and frankly, the numbers back that up. Since 2014, with the games being relatively similar, Flacco's played 67, Carr's played 76, so a bit of a difference there, but more yards for Derek Carr, way more touchdowns, and actually fewer interceptions in more games played, a better yards per attempt. So for me, it's really not much of a question. I would rather have Derek Carr as my starting quarterback than Joe Flacco, so I'll ask you guys the same question. Who would you rather have? Let's say you're Oakland. Do you want to take on Joe Flacco and then cut Derek Carr, or would you rather just stick with Derek Carr as your starting quarterback? There's a reason the Raiders there are at number 7. I think they make a lot more sense just to stick with Derek Carr, or if you're going to go cut Derek Carr or trade him, you can get somebody much better than a Joe Flacco, who at this point, he's just not that good, guys. Hopefully you were good, and if you were good this holiday season, I'm playing Santa Tom for you guys. Chatsports.com/bet. Promo code LIVE120. Sign up and get started with our partner BetDSI. Then DM us on Twitter @ChatSports. Once you guys do that, we'll get you guys hooked up with an NFL jersey. Now, supply is limited. We've got plenty of inventory, but they've gone pretty quickly. So get in on the action while you still can. Don't do the very last second shopping. Do it right now. Chatsports.com/bet. Promo code LIVE120. Then DM us on Twitter @ChatSports. We'll get you guys hooked up. The links, if you're watching on YouTube, are near the top of the description. If you're on Facebook, I'll get it posted in the comments section for you. All right, number 6, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, among the teams that could acquire Joe Flacco. I saw a lot of buzz elsewhere about Flacco and the Bucs, and I actually don't think it makes all that much sense. Money's a bit tight. Granted, you can save about $21 million by cutting Winston, whose contract is only guaranteed for injury this year. And there are massive questions around the entire Bucs organization. But if you're Tampa Bay, what makes more sense? Going out and trading for Joe Flacco, who isn't that great, or trying to give Winston one more year? It's Winston, right? I think that makes a lot more sense for the Bucs. You don't sacrifice assets unless he gets cut. Maybe then it makes a little bit more sense. I don't think the Bucs are a true top 5 landing spot for Joe Flacco unless a new staff comes in and they really do want to blow it all up and they get rid of Winston and all kinds of players and they need a legit stopgap quarterback. And although Winston has had his issues with turnovers, again, here's your comparison. Not as accurate, more yards, a lot more TDs, but way more interceptions, but yards per attempt, definitely in favor of Jameis Winston. So look, Flacco's, by the way, yards per attempt, if you're not above 7, that's typically not very good for an NFL quarterback. That's why I'm not the world's biggest Joe Flacco fan. I'd rather stick with Winston. He'd actually be cheaper to bring on Joe Flacco, but what are you going for there? Like, what's your end game? Flacco's going to be your quarterback for a couple more years? I got to stick with Winston, see if he can take the next step forward. We'll stay in the state of Florida here. Number 5, the Miami Dolphins. And it really comes down to what are you going to do with Ryan Tannehill? Do you move on from him? You can save $18.75 million by cutting Ryan Tannehill after the June 1st deadline, or July 1st deadline, but is Flacco really better than Ryan Tannehill? Cap space is a little bit here of an issue at this point. Brock Osweiler, David Fales, whatever, those guys are not your answer. In the end, it really comes down to, this is the common theme of these teams, which quarterback would you rather have, Tannehill or Joe Flacco? Let's look at the numbers then. Take note here, same year, but remember Tannehill did not play in 2017. He has 13 less games. Completion percentage, pretty similar. Yards in favor of Flacco. TDs, only by 10 with a difference of 13 games. I'll give it to Tannehill. Way fewer interceptions and a better yards per attempt. I think I'd rather stick with Tannehill. Now, if you want to go and get Flacco, I guess it's kind of a lateral move, so I can live with it. But injury, though, is the one big thing there, because Tannehill has missed time with those injuries. If you don't trust him to stay healthy, that's when I think Flacco makes a little bit more sense. All right, number 4, the New York Football Giants. Now, the buzz is they're going to keep Eli Manning for some reason, but they would save $17 million if they cut him. Now, the question is, would Flacco be willing to only be a stopgap, or does he want to be the go-to quarterback? Does he want to sign somewhere he's looking, hey, I got at least 3, 4, 5 more years? Because the Giants, if you do bring in Flacco, I don't think that's the option. Eli Manning is not going to be there much longer, even if he does come back next year. Alex Tanney, Trickshot Tanney, is a backup at best. Kyle Lauletta, who some thought could be the guy, has been demoted back to the number 3 role. So the reality is, the Giants don't have a long-term guys. Even if you get rid of Eli Manning and you bring in Joe Flacco, you still got to go find your long-term franchise guy. Now, the numbers here, again, I'll make note, about 10 more games for Eli. I'm not the world's biggest Eli Manning fan, but the numbers kind of prefer Eli Manning. And I don't think Manning's any good. Now, granted, the numbers have declined in recent years for Eli because he's been all kind of banged up and just, frankly, hasn't been a very good quarterback, got benched last year. So who would you rather start, Eli Manning or Joe Flacco? I know what the numbers, I think they're a bit inflated because of the previous years for Eli Manning. Give me Joe Flacco. And again, I don't really like Joe Flacco all that much, but I'd rather have Flacco at the helm than Eli Manning. At the very least, I think it would open up more deep balls for guys like Odell Beckham, and I think defenses would have a little bit more respect for Joe Flacco than for Eli Manning. All right, folks, if you want something to add to your Christmas list, how about a Mizzen and Main shirt like the one I'm wearing right now? Comfortable.af is the site, and that URL does check out because you are not going to find a more comfortable shirt, dress or otherwise, than a Mizzen and Main shirt. They've got sweaters too, all kinds of great stuff to wear at comfortable.af. Go check them out, Mizzen and Main. Again, folks, that is the best damn dress shirt out there. All right, number 3, the Denver Broncos. And money kind of plays into a bit of a factor here because you're going to eat $10 million by cutting Case Keenum, but you save 11. So I guess in the end, is that, let's just say it's the 7 if you trade for Joe Flacco, which I don't know if that's actually going to happen, is the $7 million worth cutting Case Keenum and moving to Joe Flacco? Now, there is a Gary Kubiak connection here, but Denver in a similar boat to, say, the Giants and I think the Dolphins as well, and other teams we'll get to here. They don't have their franchise guy. Garrett Grayson, the former third-round pick by the Saints, on the practice squad, he's not it. Keenum has not fared all that well lately. So, again, the comparison graphics actually for this one, kind of similar. Exact same completion percentage, and this, by the way, is, we'll call it 3.5 less games for Case Keenum because 37 starts versus 41 games for Flacco, 39 total appearances for Keenum, so some garbage time mixed in there. But 4 less TDs, 4 less interceptions, but the yards per attempt also favors Case Keenum. Keenum has not been good. The Vikings here, I think, inflates his numbers. It's a toss-up for me. If you're going to save $7 to $8 million, I think I actually might prefer just to try and stick and roll with Keenum. Maybe get a better offensive coordinator in there for Denver. All right, number 2, the Washington Redskins. And this one is very difficult because it makes a lot of sense for next year if you ignore the money side of it, right? Alex Smith, his career is now in doubt. Colt McCoy also coming off an injury. Josh Johnson made some plays, but I don't think you want to start him next year. And Mark Sanchez is bad. The problem is you still have to count Alex Smith. He is going to count $20 million against the cap next year. If you're the Redskins, I don't know if you can justify paying $20 million for Alex Smith, whatever you're going to pay your number 3 quarterback, we'll just say like $2 million there, and you want to bring in, let's say Flacco's contract at $18 million if you trade for him, maybe less if you just sign him if he's cut. At that point, you're looking at $40 million invested in your quarterback spot. You're not going to win games that way. You're not going to be able to invest anywhere else on your roster. So the Redskins, by virtue of necessity and the unfortunateness of Alex Smith's injury, might be hamstrung into saying, you know what, we like Joe Flacco, money's a problem, we have to go super, super cheap at quarterback, and then we just re-sign someone like Colt McCoy and hope that works out for the best. So the Redskins make a lot of sense from a need perspective, but it doesn't make the most sense from a monetary perspective. So I'll ask you guys, should the Redskins make a move for Joe Flacco? Give me a heart for yes and a wow face for no. I like the idea only on the field. I think it'd be a good move for Washington. The problem is the money makes it really, really difficult. So I actually lean more towards no, and maybe the Redskins go draft someone somewhat early and maybe get a jump start on their post-Alex Smith franchise outcome. All right, then the number one team, it is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, they are going to move on from Blake Bortles, thank goodness. Cody Kessler, he ain't it either. The big problem here for the Jaguars is the money. As of right now, before cuts and restructures, i.e. cutting a guy like Blake Bortles to save $9.5 million, they're actually almost $6 million over the cap for next year. Now, they're going to have to do some finagling to get more money and do all that stuff. Kessler and Bortles both under contract next year, but Bortles is gone. Kessler can be your backup, I guess, if you want. They have Tannerhill on the practice squad, but Tannerhill isn't any good either. Now, look at the numbers here for Flacco and Bortles. Don't let the numbers totally fool you by Blake Bortles, because there is a lot of garbage time numbers in there. But here's the thing. Joe Flacco, guys, he's really not that good. He is barely a starting caliber NFL quarterback. That's what he is. So if you're Jacksonville, the reality is it's an upgrade. I like this fit here for Jacksonville and Joe Flacco. I think it makes sense for Flacco in particular. But Jackson will have to clear out a bit of money just to afford Flacco because they foolishly re-signed Blake Bortles last year. All right, let's recap the top teams that could acquire Joe Flacco via a trade or if he's cut in free agency. Number 7, the Oakland Raiders. Then the BUCS are at 6, the Dolphins at 5. The New York Giants there at number 4, the Broncos at number 3, and the two teams I think make the most sense, but there are money implications here, and those could be a cause for concern. The Redskins at 2, and the Jaguars check in at the number 1 spot, because Blake Bortles, thankfully that era, I think is almost over in Jacksonville. So before we sign off here, what team will Joe Flacco play for next year? Let me know in the comments section. If I have to pick one team right now, sign me up for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Other teams do make some sense, but I think the Jags, because of Blake Bortles, who's going to be cut, I think they are the most obvious team with a blatant need at quarterback and a chance to make a move for Flacco via a trade or more likely in free agency.